Sorry. All right, so I'm going to get us started. I know that people might still continue to join us. All right. So this is, sorry, wrong one. This session is on using Google Meet. And this session is for you. So we want to make sure that you get all of your questions answered. If you have questions that come up, please feel free to use the chat feature. So you can type your questions in. It's usually at the bottom of your screen on a computer. If you have a smaller bar, it might be in the 3 little dots. For your iPad or phone users, it might be up at the top. So you can type in your questions while we're presenting. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as we go, but we'll definitely have time for questions at the end as well. So we're going to start with our traditional territorial land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we are connecting through is part of the traditional territory of the Chippewa, Potawatomi, and Delaware nations. By personally making a land acknowledgement, you are, my bar is in my way. You are taking part in an act of reconciliation. Sorry, Denise, do you have honoring the land and Indigenous heritage.
Good job.
Sorry, everything's covering up all my screen. So today we're going to cover how to join a meet, the tools in Google Meet, common problems, and questions and answers. So today I have with me Denise Ladd, and she is part of the program team, and I am Steph Wood, and I'm also part of the program team. And so we have been supporting teachers to help them with their online tools. So we're here to help you as well with the online tools. So there's lots of ways to get into Google Meets. We're going to show you from both sides. So from a laptop or Chromebook or from an iPad. Most of the students will be joining from one of those 2 devices, as those are provided by the school. You may also have students who are joining with tablets that are their own, so things might look a little bit different on tablets. So when you're joining a meet, students can go to meet.google.com, and this will be the window that they see on a laptop or a Chromebook, and then on an iPad or a tablet. And they would choose join a meeting if they knew the code for the meeting that they are joining. It's really important that students are signed in with their LKDSB.com email address. This allows the teacher to know that it's that student that is logging in. These are usually, it's usually their first name, last name at LKDSB.com. Although some students, if they have a common first and last name combination, they may have a number in there. Or students may have a different first name, but they go by a preferred name. So you may need to check with the parent to make sure that you have the correct email address. And then their password is usually their ID number, but some schools change it. So when they go to log into the Google Meets, they're going to need to log in with a Gmail or a Google account, which we would prefer they use their lkdsb.com. Teachers will share how to access the Google Meet in a couple of places. So it really depends on the platform that the teachers are using. Students in grades 4 to 8 are usually using Google Classroom. Students in JK to 3 are usually using Seesaw. So in Google Classroom, teachers have the option to use the Meet link at the top of their classroom when students log into their classroom. They will need to be logged in with their lkdsb.com email to do this. And the Meet will be right at the very top of the page. It will say Meet link, and they can click on the link from there. Teachers will usually make that link available when it's time for class, and will sometimes hide that Meet link when it's not class time, when it's lunch or before school starts. They may also post it as part of the announcements. So they'll have like an announcement right under that bar at the very top. And this will usually be at the top, and it'll be a link and maybe the schedule. In Seesaw, many teachers post it as a pinned post in the journal. So they would have to be clicked on this little book, the journal, and then usually there's a pinned post with the Meet link that students can click on right there. They may also send it in the inbox, which is the little speech bubbles. And then they may send a message to them with the Meet link. Some teachers use the same link all the time. Other teachers change the Meet link every day. So it will depend on the teacher, but these are the places where you will find it for these students. When they go into the Meet for the first time, they need to make sure that they allow to use the camera, and it may ask them about the audio or microphone. They have to make sure to choose allow. Otherwise, the teacher won't be able to see them and they can't turn it on after the fact. So when they're going in the first time, they need to choose allow. And then they'll either get a button like this, a join now button, or if the teacher requires them to ask to join, they may have this ask to join green button instead. Either way, they need to click that in order to access the Meet itself.
I'm seeing actually more and more teachers this week doing the ready to join button and asking to join. I think teachers are getting a little more, they don't want other students getting in the meets before them. So they're turning on the quick access, and then it makes the students have to ask to join. So.
So yeah, as long as the students know that the button that they want to click is usually the highlighted button. It might be blue, it's sometimes green. But yeah, I've noticed this week too as well, Denise. So students might have more than one Google Meet a day. So in some schools, they may have a Meet with their homeroom teacher, but then they might have a different Meet link for French. They might have a different Meet link for phys ed. So it depends on what their subject specialist teachers are. And so you may have to go back into Seesaw or back into Google Classroom in order to be able to find the links for those specific meets. Some teachers send their students with a link in the chat, but it really depends on how the teachers have it set up. So as long as you know where to go to find the links and the schedule in the Google Classroom or in Seesaw, that will make it easier for you to help your children find the Meet that they're supposed to be going to. So when you get into Google Meets, these are the really important tools for the children to be able to use. Younger children may need help with some of these tools. And especially on the iPads, the buttons are very, very close together. So it's quite easy to hit the wrong one. So when the students are unmuted on an iPad, it just looks normal. And on a computer, also here, just plain nothing on it. When you're muted, it will have a line across it and it will turn red or white. Teachers often use pictures to help cue the children when it's time to unmute and mute, but smaller children may need help with this. And then they can also turn their camera on and off. I know teachers really like to be able to see their children as they're working with them, so encouraging to have their camera on is quite helpful. And then the hang up button, we've actually had some conversations with children because a lot of the children that we're teaching right now haven't ever seen a phone. And so this hang up button, the visual isn't overly helpful for our younger children because they've never hung up a phone in the way that some of us older people have hung up a phone. So
that is actually hilarious. It's
right?
So true.
You don't think about it though.
That's right.
Okay, and then the other thing that teachers will sometimes ask is that they raise their hand to participate. So this is a new feature that's come out in the last little while. It's on the iPad and it's on the your laptop. And so in this case, this is just the laptop screen. You have the raise hand feature at the bottom. When they click it, it stays lit up and green. So the teacher will wait to call on them until they have a chance. The child then needs to click it again to take it off. So they may need reminders on that they have to remember to put their hand back down. They can turn on captions here. I know we have some students that are English language learners. This can be helpful for them to turn on the captions. It's only at the user end, so no one sees it but the person who turns on the captions themselves. And then also, some teachers use the chat feature as part of their lesson. On a laptop, this is at the top of the screen, and it pops a little window out from the side where children can type into the box at the bottom. Some teachers also turn this off. So they may not be using this feature, but it's important to know that the chat is at the top and the raise hand is at the bottom. How are we doing for questions, Denise?
We have 0 questions right now. We're all just listening and learning from you, Steph. So
all right, if I'm talking too fast, stop me. I just want to be aware of your time and make sure we get through everything. So on the iPad, the chat is a little bit harder to get to. So the raise hand option is at the bottom with the mute and the video on and off and the hangups at the end of the meet. But to get to the chat, they need to click those 3 little dots, and this pops up a whole menu at the bottom. So then they can find this, and it's not called chat either on an iPad. It's called in-call messages. So they would have to choose this, and then the message screen pops up and it takes up the whole screen. So they can either be in the, like, see the meeting, or they see the chat box. So they want to use the chat and then close the chat box to go back to see what's happening in their meeting.
Well, it is kind of a pain on an iPad.
It is. It's really nice on the Chromebooks and the laptops, because then you can still see your meet and then you have your chat box on the side so you can monitor what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers might also ask students to share their screen. This is super helpful because then we can see what it is that they're doing and what they're working on, or if they're having trouble navigating through Seesaw or how to use a tool in the Google Suite. So sometimes we'll ask them to share their screen, and this is the way that you would do it on a laptop. So this big Present Now button is at the bottom, and you click it. And for our students, we would want them to share their entire screen, because that way we can see everything that they're doing. Then this dialog box pops up, and you have to click the actual screen that you see in the middle. And once you do that, that share button will light up and they can click on it. And then it will show that they are sharing the screen. And there's a little dialog box at the bottom. My toolbar from Zoom is in the way. To stop sharing, and that little dialog box stays at the bottom over top of everything that you're doing. So then they can go to this blue button, stop sharing at the bottom, and that will stop them from sharing their screen. Teacher can ask the next child to go ahead and share their screen. It's quite similar on an iPad, except for that, again, we have to go to those 3 little dots at the bottom and then navigate that pop-up menu. So we go to the 3 little dots, we choose the share screen with the arrow button, and then the child has to choose start broadcast. And then it will count down 3, 2, 1. This button turns red, and then they can navigate to another app to show, say, their work in Seesaw, or how many of the activities they have left in their Seesaw to work on. To stop their sharing, they can either go back to the Google Meet app and choose stop broadcast, or they can hit this little red record button, which will be at the very, very, very top of their screen, and that will stop the broadcast as well. It's not quite as intuitive on an iPad as it is on the laptop. And this happens a lot. So students will, because the buttons are very close together, or if they're new to navigating with a mouse or the touchpad, they'll sometimes hit the hang up button instead of hitting maybe the mute button or turning their camera on and off. So this happens quite a bit. So if you are on a laptop or a Chromebook, when they leave the meeting, it immediately gives them the option to rejoin. So they can just go ahead and click that rejoin button and it will bring them right back into the meet. If they're on an iPad, it doesn't give you the option to rejoin. So if you went into the meeting with the code through the app, like you knew the little numbers and letters that the teacher gave for the meeting, they can use that and type that in. Or you're going to have to go back to the Seesaw or Google Classroom and find the link for that meeting and then click that link and get back in. But this does happen quite often. So this may be something that you need to help students with getting back in and out of meetings. These are the most common problems that we hear from teachers and students about Google Meets. So the students can't hear the teacher can't hear the students, the student can't see the student can't see the teacher's video. All of these little glitches are almost always fixed if you leave the meeting and come back in. And it does happen fairly often, and it's really random. I have one student where every time we connect, about 50% of the time she can't hear me. So then we have to start a new meet. But this will be the way that you can resolve almost all of those issues. Denise, have you had any other issues come up? These were the big ones that I heard from teachers.
I actually had a teacher today. He wasn't able to hear. So I came on and joined his meet, and then I did a little number talk. And when he came back on after I was done, he couldn't hear what the kids were saying. So something happened. He didn't log out or anything. He was just joining the meeting, like listening while I was doing my thing. So he actually had to, I stayed, he left the meeting, he came back in, and everything worked again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so almost always, if they're having trouble with sound or video, leave the meeting and reconnect, and those will usually be resolved.
I had a lot of students today specifically, they were just getting randomly kicked out of Google Meet. And it was happening in, I was in about 5 or 6 classes today, and it was happening in 4 of them. Different schools, something was going on, I guess, today with Google Meet, and they were randomly getting kicked out.
And that totally happens too, right? Like there's times where stuff just doesn't work, and
I have also had other people this week too say that it buffers, and it gets that little circle when they go to join the meet, and it just keeps buffering, and it never goes and it never says you're in the meet. It never says you're not in the meet. It'll buffer for like 10 minutes. And they simply have to just X out of that, go back in again, and try and log in again and see if it works. Right?
Yeah, sometimes it's just glitchy. And as long as you take a deep breath and log out and try and come back in, it usually fixes itself.
So there's a question in the chat, Steph.
Yeah.
It's Robin. Robin wants to know, what if the teacher has the Google Meet as a PDF? I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so they have it posted like a PDF, and then there's a link to click on in the PDF itself.
Yeah, but when I'm talking about my kids, especially because we couldn't get on it down in the room, and my husband had to go through all the different ways to set up PDF. So I'm just thinking if someone comes in like that, my staff can't get to it from there. So I don't know if you have a way to get to it.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. So in the PDF, it's got like their schedule, and then does it have like the meet link, but you can't click it?
Yes, you can click it, but it won't go anywhere.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah. I'm going to show something because this will help for this situation. I'm going to share my whole screen, and I'm going to go into the Google Meet here. Oops, sorry, wrong way. Okay, so I'm just gonna start a meeting here. If your students have like the link that you can see, but you can't actually click on it, this is all you need in order to get into the Meet. That last little bit, right here.
Last, 9 or 10 letters.
Yeah. So okay. If you went back to you go to meet.google.com or you go to the app, you can just type that in. You don't even need the dashes. You can just type it all in. And then that will take you to that Meet if you're ever stuck.
Oh, okay.
You could just copy and paste that off the PDF stuff.
Yeah, sometimes the copying and pasting doesn't work depending on your machine though. I've had people that are like, I can't copy and paste from a PDF. So that might not work, but you could definitely type it. But if you can copy and paste it. But that is the actual meeting code that you would need to get into that meet. Are there any other questions?
Not in the chat.
Okay, does anybody else want to see anything again? Was there anything that you weren't sure about? Everybody's so quiet.
It's a long day.
It's a very long day on all the screens. Okay, so I made a PDF of my slide deck and I'm going to post it in the chat. So you could just click on the link in the chat and it will open up in a new window for you. You can save it and then you can reference it at any time if you need to go back and if you weren't sure how you screen share or how you raise and lower your hand. So I'm going to put that in the chat now. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or any concerns you might have about helping your children.
Well, hearing none, I do want to thank you very much for taking the time. It could be perhaps that you answered all the questions with the presentation. So sorry, I have a granddaughter.
No, that's okay. Oh.
But I want to thank you very much for this. And I love that it is being recorded. Sorry, she's 10 months. But thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks for coming today, everybody.